Daf Yomi is Daf Yomi for Shabbos Kodesh. So we're going to record this daf on Friday afternoon, dedicated to our Shmira for Am Yisrael, Yeshua for the Chayalim, Hatzalah for the Shvuyim. Daf Yomi, we're going to start on the bottom of Ayam Bays, on the bottom of Ayam Bays on the Bays. So the Gemara said we're going to start on Ayam Bays on the Bays, 1, 2, 3, around 8 lines from the bottom. So the Gemara had said that Amar Rav Sheshes, Amar Rav Huna, Ein Loven al Shar Shabashuk. So basically, you're not allowed to borrow money on the basis of produce in the marketplace, meaning to say on the price of things. So we have been discussing a future purchase, a future contract, and here you can't say I'm going to lend you money and you're going to pay me back on the price of what, let's say, for example, apples, what they'll be going for in, let's say, a few months from now, even though right now apples are going for $12. And so therefore you can't say whatever the apples are going for in, basically I'm lending you the money of apples at this price. Let's say right now apples are going for $5 a pound, and you're going to have to pay me back $5 a pound in 3 months, even though the apples could be worth much more than. So that could be a form of interest. So Amarle Rav Yosef Parchama Rav Sheshes Amarle Rav Yosef Paraba Rav Sheshes Mi Amar Rav Huna Hacha. Does Rav Huna really say you're not allowed to borrow money al shar shebashuk? They can't borrow money in this manner. V'abai minei Rav Huna Hani b'nei Bei Rav. But they once asked Rav Huna this question, that if somebody wants to borrow money in he wants to borrow money in the month of Tishrei and pay it back in a few months later in Teves, basically based upon the price of in the marketplace, is it permitted or prohibited? And he responded that under those circumstances, halchiti behine v'halchiti b'shili. So basically, they wanted to borrow money, and these people wanted to borrow money in the month of Tishrei. So let's say they want to borrow $100 in Tishrei, and they want to pay him back with $100 worth of wheat in Teves, based upon the price, the current going price of wheat as it's currently marked up in Tishrei. And they asked if it's permitted. And there, Rav Huna said to them, well, right now they can go and buy the wheat in Hini and Chili. So therefore, since right now they could buy that wheat at that price, therefore it's permitted to say, we're going to pay you back at the wheat at this price. Because he buys a binu parlay. If they want, they can go right now and buy it. So for that reason, Rav Huna said it was permitted. So why is Rav Huna here now saying it's prohibited? So the Gemara says, Meikara Savar Rav Huna Ein Lavin. At first, Rav Huna said you can't do it, but Kivin the Shama Hadam Rav Shmuel Bar Chia Rabbi Elazar Lavin. But once he heard Rav Shmuel Bar Chia say the name of Rabbi Elazar that you can do it, Amar Iu Nami Lavin. He said you could also do it. So Tana Rabban. And so now the Gemara says in this context, and we're going to give several examples of this. So let's say somebody is taking a place, he's taking some goods from a place where it is cheaper to a place where it's more expensive. Let's say you're taking it from China to America. So the goods are cheaper in China than in America. And so you're taking, let's say, your watches from China and you bring them to America. Matzo Chavero, and your friend finds you doing this, and he says, Taneli, give me the goods right here in China. Vani elcha and I'll basically give you the price right here. In China, the watches are $5, and in America, they're $6. So just give me the watches, and I'll give you the $6 for them. So basically, that could also be a form of interest. So the answer is Bershus Mocher, on top of Ayin Gimel Amid Aleph. If it's in the domain of the seller, then it's going to be permitted. Bershus Mocher, meaning to say, if the seller accepts upon himself the responsibility for the goods until they're actually sold, then it's permitted, because then it's not a loan until it's sold. And once it's sold in America for the $6, that's all the person is getting. And so therefore it belongs to the first person. But if it's in the domain of the purchaser, if the purchaser is getting responsibility, then it's going to be prohibited because basically then it becomes like a loan with interest. So then we have the next case. The next case is hamor peros mimakom u'makom. So let's say a person is bringing the fruits. Let's say he's taking his wheat from one place to another, and matzo chaver v'amar and his friend finds him, and he says, to namely, give me the wheat. V'ani elcha peros sheyesh li b'os hamakom. So in this case, let's go back to the case of the watches. He says the guy is bringing his watches from China to America, but he says, so they meet in China. He says, give me the watches and I'll give you my watches, which I already have in America. So in that case, so basically that could also be a form of interest. You might think that way, but he says, no, if you already have the watches in the more expensive place, then it's permitted, mutter. Otherwise, it's going to be prohibited. And now we have the next case, which is basically a little bit more complicated, and this is the case of, so the chamar, and we have donkey drivers, malim b'makom hayoker, b'makom hazol. So what they're allowed to do, basically, so this is a case of where you give a person a discount for paying more. So generally speaking, we want to say that if you're selling it, you're not allowed to offer a discount for paying in advance, because that's like interest. So therefore, but in this case, the donkey drivers, malam b'makom hayoko or b'makom hazol, they're allowed to charge in a more expensive place the same rate that they would charge in the cheaper place. The inel choshen, they don't have to be concerned that it's interest. Meaning to say that what was going on here, they would the chamarin would buy. Let's say they would buy these apples or this wheat or these watches in a place where it's cheap, and then they would bring it to the more expensive place. They would bring it from the watches from China to America to sell. So in this case, basically they accepted the orders in advance in the more expensive places. So they accepted the orders while they're still in America, but they charged those people the lower prices. So basically, they like go back to the example we said about the watches, which $5 in China and $6 in America. So they accepted the watches, they accepted the money for a $6 watch while they're still in America, but they charge them only $5 for it. So then these drivers were responsible for the goods until they brought them to the people in America who gave them the money. So this it looks like it's interest, because basically he's giving him only $5 and he's getting the watches for $6. So we're saying here the chamar and malam b'makom hayoker kib'makom hazol. They can give you the price for the watch based upon the price in China, even though they're in America. The enochosh, it's not ribis. It's not interest. Why not? Why isn't it ribis? My time or Papa Amar nichulahu the magaluhu tara, because the driver is getting something out of it. The donkey driver, what's he getting? Because when they show up to China with all their cash, then it's good for them because the people are going to be so impressed. So the fact they're walking in with cash is going to open up a lot of doors for them, and so therefore people are going to want their business, and that's good. Whereas the another answer is from Rav Achabraid Ravika Amar Nichlu de Mosley Gabayo, because when they come in there and basically when they come into the place, they're going to get a discount from the people they shop at. Meaning to say, because they know that they have a lot of orders coming in, and so therefore the people who are selling to them on wholesale are going to give them a discount. And my benaya, what's the difference between the two approaches? Ika benayo tagra chadata, if it's a new merchant, and so if it's a new merchant, and so therefore they're not going to give him a discount because he says he has a lot of orders waiting. But they will. But if they see a lot of cash, they're still going to give him a price. So basically, the different answers is a distinction if he's a new merchant. He doesn't have a relationship with these people yet. So now the Gemara gives us a Gemara gives us another case, another story. So the case is as follows. Besura Azli Arba. In Surah, basically they had produce, and it was going for let's say 4 boxes for a zuz. Let's just say that four measures for a zuz. Whereas Bekafra Azlin Shita. But whereas if you had the same, let's say boxes, let's say you had in the villages or in Kafri, in the cheaper towns, it was going for 6 boxes for a Zeus. So Yav Rav Zuze Lachamri, so Rav gave gave money to the donkey drivers, um, basically to get it at the price that I was going for in Kafri or in the villages. The Kibole Onse de Orcha, and he took upon himself responsibility if anything would happen to the boxes on his way to Surah. Vishakal minau chamisha, and he took from them. He got the boxes not for 4 and not for 6, but for 5. So the Gemara says, well, why couldn't we just said that the donkey drivers are allowed to get it for the cheaper price? Vinishkol shisa, why didn't he get it for 6? So the Gemara says, Adam Chashav Shani. So he was a distinguished person, so he was trying to be more meticulous. So he said, even though I could have claimed that I'm getting so much, they're getting so much out of me that it's a fair trade, he didn't want to make the claim for that much. So therefore, he accepted responsibility, even though he didn't have to. And secondly, he bought it at an in-between price. So Gemara says, Ba'mine, Rav Asim, Rabbi Yochanan, Ma'u begrutos cane. Can you do the same thing with grutos? Grutos are like little pieces of metal. So are you allowed to do it in that manner? Is that also going to be permitted? So Amar Le, meaning to say, so basically, is it going to be allowed to do this type of transaction only with its produce or even to like pieces of like metal? So what the difference is, according to Rashi, is that the produce was something that they would recognize the people, and so therefore the donkey drivers bought from the same wholesalers, and so therefore they could really expect that their reputation would help them. But these grotos, these pieces of metal, was not the regular arrangement, and so therefore they wouldn't necessarily go back just to buy the extra metal, so maybe it wouldn't work. So Amrle Bikesh Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi Lasos came to Kli Pishtin. So he wanted to do this with like linen or flax, with utensils, with clothing. And Rebbe didn't allow him. Ikud Amri, some say Bikesh Rabbi Lasos Begrotos came. The Rebbe wanted to do this with these pieces of metal. So it's really only with produce, but not with these pieces of metal. Another discussion, Pardesa. So let's say you went into a future contract for a vineyard. Rav says it's prohibited. Ushmuel Shari. Shmuel says it would be permitted. So basically, you want to pay in advance for the orchard. Rav says it's prohibited. Kivan dilakame shavyatfe. The reason why it's prohibited is because, so basically, what they want to do here is he wants to pay in advance for the wine that will be produced from the vineyard. So Rav says it's not allowed, and Shmuel says it's allowed. Rav says it's not allowed because since when the wine actually comes out, it'll be worth much more. Right now, you're buying it in advance. Agar not the way. It looks to him like you're saying, I'm giving you the money now, and basically I'm getting it at the cheaper price because since I'm wanting to use the money in advance, therefore I'm getting it at the cheaper price. So it's a form of interest. So Shmuel says, no, it's allowed. Keeping the Have Beit Tiua, because there's risk involved, because there can be like a bad storm will destroy the vineyard. Well, it doesn't necessarily look like you're getting money for letting him use his money. It looks like you're giving him money because you're taking the risk involved. He agrees that you're allowed to do it if the grapes are being harvested by oxen, because there it's really a lot of risk, so that won't be allowed. Shmuel said to those people who lend seed to the sharecroppers. So basically what happened was, and the way Rashi explains it, is that the general rule was that the sharecroppers needed to give the seeds for which they planted. But let's say he had no seeds, he would borrow them from the landowner before the start of the season, and he would give back the same amount of seeds after it was harvested. Now, this is generally speaking rabbinically prohibited because it's called a seah b'seah. They're not allowed to borrow produce and pay back in produce. So therefore, let's say you have these sharecroppers are borrowing these seeds, and then they want to pay back after the season. So Shmuel said hafuchu ba'ara, basically turn over the ground, like do something to the ground to show ownership. So that you've acquired the land, because now basically what you're doing is you're doing some act of a kinyan on the land, and so therefore, uh, you're keeping you. It's like you're trading these seeds for that part of the land, and so therefore, it's not a case of sabasa. Basically, it's like a trade for that part. Otherwise, it's going to be like a loan and it's prohibited. So basically, do it like it's in exchange for that part of the land that you've done. So Amalu Rava Lahanu Demantre Naage. So Rava said to those people whose job it was to guard the fields. And so basically what happened here was these people, these watchmen, they were guarding the grain in the fields, and their work was over when the grain was harvested, but they weren't paid until after it was um, sold. So therefore, they were usually given extra money because they had to wait to be paid. So this should be prohibited. So how do we avoid the problem of rivets? Because they're being paid because they're being paid more because they're being paid later. So Rava said, "Lahana demantri bagi puku afochu bebeidari." Go out and turn over the grain in the threshing floor. Meaning, say it's like you're still working for him. So that your payment is not completed until that moment. Because they're really just paying you at the end. And it's at that moment that they're giving you a good rate. Meaning to say, you just make it look like you're working until the end, and then they're just paying you a nice rate for working all this long for them. Amarle Rabbanan Rava. So now we have another problem. So Rabbanan said to Rava, Ka achil mar Rabbis. The Rabbanan said to Rava, they rebuked him. They said, you're taking interest. Why were they accusing him? To Kuyama Shakli Arba, because everybody else takes from their sharecroppers, they take a share of 4 korban per field, 4 bushels, let's say, for each area. Masaki Larise Benisan, and they take it from the sharecropper in Nisan, which they harvested in Pesach time. The Mar Natar Luhuad Iyar. You wait until the month we're in right now, which is Iyar. And because you're waiting to take it later, Shakel Shisa, you're going to take 6. And so it's like you're charging interest. So aren't you charging interest? Is a big problem. So Amar Lahu, Rav said, no, Atun Kav Disun Shalokatin. You're the ones who are doing it wrong. Ara Aris Mishtabed. Atun Misalkisulu Benisan Mafsidutu Bekama. He says, you're the one who are making the mistake. The Aris, the land, is basically Meshubad is bound to the sharecropper. Meaning to say the sharecropper is allowed to use the land until the crop is ready. If you are going to make them leave their land in Nisan, mafsidu l'bekama, you're making them lose money because you're making them harvest it before it's ripe, and so they're losing money. So basically, you're the ones who are doing it wrong. Ananatro hu adiyar. The reason why I'm taking more in Iyar is I'm waiting for them, and so they're ending up taking more because it's in the month of Iyar. So now we're on top of Ayin Gimel Beis. So now the Gemara is going to tell us 5 more incidents with business and rabbis. Rav Mari bar Rachel. So first of all, why is Rav Mari given the name of his mother? Why is he called by his mother's name and not his father? So his mother was Shmuel's daughter Rachel, and so because the Gemara tells us elsewhere that she was conceived, she was taken captive, and he was conceived by his mother before her father had converted. So he's called by the mother's name. Rav Mari bar Rachel, Mashkin le Ahu Nachri Besa. So a certain Nachri, a non-Jew, gave Rav Mari his house as a pledge to Rav Mari. So Rav Mari bar Rachel, Mashkin le Ahu Nachri Besa, Hadar Zabno Rava. So then after he gave it to him as a pledge, he went and he gave this house, he sold it to Rava, which is okay. You can sell your pledge. Uh, so so then what did he do? Natar tracer yachar shata. So Murray waited the 12 months of the year that a lender is allowed to use the pledge. And after he did that, Shako Agar Besa and Amti Lela Rava. He then took the rent for the house and brought it to Rava. Basically, the rent was typically paid at the end of each month. So Rav Murray waited 12 months until the end of the first month of the second year. And then he brought the rent for the preceding month, meaning to say the first year he didn't pay any rent, but because the first year he had a house as a pledge. But now that he's using it, he's going to start paying it. So Amar Rav Murray said to him, Hi, Dulo, Amti Lamar, Agar Besa, the reason I didn't give you anything until now is the Stam Mashkana Shata, is because basically the basic rule is that the pledge is for 1 year. And so that as the lender, you're entitled to 1 year to use the pledge and he can't redeem it. So the Stamashkanta Shata, Ibal Nachri Masalki, Ibal Nachri Masalki, often Matzim Masalki, and he couldn't remove me from this property. And so therefore I was allowed to live there rent free. So but now you should take the rent for the house for this year. So he says, so Rava responded, if I had known that it was pledged to you, I would never have bought it. If I would have known that you were in part of this house, I would have given you the first right to do it. But now I'll go with you according to their laws. As long as the borrower doesn't evict the lender from the pledge, he can't take rent for it. I'm not I'm not going to take any rent until I basically pay you back the money and then get it out. So now we have another law. Amrle Rava mibarnish Rav Ashi Chazimar Rabbanan de Ka'achli Rabisa. He says, so Rav Barnish said to Rav Ashi, look how the rabbis are using interest. The Ka'achli Rabisa, they're consuming interest. Yavi Zuzi Achamra B'Tishrei, they give money for the wine in Tishrei, and then they choose the wine in Teves. So basically, it's like what we saw before, that what they're doing is they're paying in advance for a certain wine, and then what's going on is the price of wine went up, and so then they're getting it at a time when the price is inflated, but they bought it at the lower price. So they gave the money for the wine, but they didn't give it for the vinegar. What's now what's now wine in Teves was wine in Tishrei. What's now vinegar in Teves was vinegar from Tishrei. So it was just that they selected it in Tishrei. So basically, when he bought the wine, he was saying he wants to buy wine without vinegar. So if he takes it in Tishrei, he anyways would be able to return the ones that were sour. So since he would have been able to do that, it's not because he's paying early, it's just because this was the basic responsibility of the sale. So the Gemara says, another story, Ravina used to give the money with Nei Akra de Shanvasa. Ravina used to give the money to the people of Akra by Shanvasa, and they used to pay him a little bit extra. So this could be like ribbis. So also coming to Rav Ashi, and he came to Rav Ashi and he said to Mishari, Mishari, is it permitted? Yes, it's permitted. This is typical. People, generally speaking, they give a little bit extra to the customer as a gift. He says, but they can't do it. It's not their land. Yes, they're allowed to. He said the reason is the Taska Mashabda, the land is going to the government, Malka, as taxes. Umalka Amar Mandi Yav Tasco Echo Ar, and the king has said whoever pays the taxes, he has the land. And so therefore they were basically taking the law, they were taking the land because the king had said it's their land. Amrle Rav Papa Rava Chazimar Hari Rabbanan Diavi Zuzi Akarga the Inchi. Look at how these rabbis are paying the taxes for other people. Mishavli Putfei. And then after they pay their taxes, they take them, basically they said, you owe us the money for this, and they make them work for them. So Amrle Hashta Ichu Shakivalo Amrle Ha Milsa. He said, if I had died, I wouldn't have been able to tell you this. Hachiam Rav Sheshis. Rav Sheshis taught Moarkayu Dahani Betav said the Malcolm Anach. Basically the everybody is kind of considered to be servants of the king. Umalka Amar Mandlo Yav Kargo, Shtavilu Mandi Yav Kargo. This is the rule of the land. And the king rules that whoever doesn't pay the taxes is meshubed. He basically owes whoever pays the taxes he owes him money. Rav Sa'oram Achui de Rav. Rav Sa'oram was Rava's brother. Ave Takif Inchi de Mahu. And he would seize the people that were not good. Mahu begohorka de Rava. And he would bring them to Rava's basically his Rava's Goharka. Rava's Goharka is the thing that he was carried in, is a wagon that he would carry the people in, that he would be carried into his shear. Amalei Rava Shapir Kavadet. It's a good thing you're doing that, what you're doing. Ra'isi She'enu Noe Kashura, because where you see that if somebody's not acting properly, how do we know that you're allowed to basically subjugate him? How do I know that even if he's acting properly? He says, so basically, you're allowed to do this. You're taking these people and you're putting them to work. You're putting them to work and you're making them carry your brother's wagon. So Amrway. Okay, you know what? We'll stop here. God willing, pick this up, and next time, everybody have a good Shabbos.